This is Democracy Watch. Mark, it looks like Donald Trump's Attorney General Pam Bondi just suffered a pretty major humiliation that was completely unexpected here. Can you explain what just happened to her family?
Yeah, so the DC bar held its most recent election. This is the bar for lawyers in the District of Columbia, and there were only two candidates running. One of whom was Brad Bondi, the brother of Pam Bondi, and he didn't just lose; he epically lost. I mean, like in a way that one rarely sees. He got 9% of the vote in a two-way vote. 9%. He lost by 82%.
So, to what extent do you think the fact that his sister is Pam Bondi, do you think that the results here are a rebuke of her?
Oh, I don't think there's any doubt. I mean, to be honest with you, this was a shockingly high turnout election. Like
Yeah.
nobody votes in the DC bar election. I'll be the first to admit I'm a voting rights lawyer. I've never voted in a DC bar election before. I mean, the DC bar, I love that there is a DC bar, and I'm sure the president does very important things in scheduling meetings or whatever. But this turned out to be like a definite referendum on whether or not you wanted, kind of normal people running the DC bar, Diane Seltzer, who won in the landslide, who I had endorsed, and George Conway had endorsed, or whether you wanted Brad Bondi, who was the brother of Pam Bondi. And I'll be honest, I don't know much about Brad Bondi other than he's the brother of Pam Bondi.
Seems like enough.
I think that was enough for most people. I did read he did an epic screed at the when he lost, which is, both sort of like understandable, but he lost by 82 points. Like there wasn't like one factor that cut against him here.
Yeah. Let's say in a scenario where he would have won, what kind of allowances, how could he have helped this administration? To what extent does the president of the bar, whether by legitimate means or even just kind of perverting his position, would he have been able to kind of help the Trump administration?
Yeah. So look, the point that he made over and over again is correct, which is that the DC bar does not oversee attorney discipline. That is actually done by the courts in Washington, D.C. So being the bar president would not have enabled him to go after individual lawyers or to, for that matter, forgive conduct for individual lawyers, nor, to be clear, do I have any reason to believe that he would have wanted to engage in that conduct anyway. But that said, read the room. Pam Bondi is an election-denying sycophant for Donald Trump, and you are her brother. And so, maybe you have some good ideas for, as he said, enhanced services, on-demand CLEs, instant certificates of good standing, and a stronger ethics hotline. Maybe you have those really good ideas, but you know what? This is not the time when lawyers in Washington, D.C. really want to roll the dice with someone who has, say, family gatherings with Pam Bondi.
Yeah, I don't know if Thanksgiving dinner with Pam Bondi is exactly the top qualification you want in the president of the DC bar. To that point, when it comes to the actual rank and file members of the DC bar, what does this say about all of them as it relates to this administration?
Oh, it says that they are deeply opposed to this administration because, like I said, it is not just that he lost in an epic landslide, but the voter turnout, or I guess the bar membership turnout, was through the roof. I mean, I think I saw that the usual bar election, you'll have like 7,000 people vote. And in this election, I think it was closer to 40,000.
Yeah.
So you had a wildly enthusiastic turnout all for one candidate who I dare say most people don't know. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I don't know Diane Seltzer beyond, having read a little bit about her so that I felt comfortable endorsing her. But, I think that this was a good example that lawyers in Washington, D.C. are fed up. They are sick and tired of what Donald Trump is doing to the legal profession. They are sick and tired of what Pam Bondi is doing to the federal workforce, what Donald Trump is doing to the federal workforce, what they're doing to the criminal justice system. And I think that, poor Brad Bondi wound up the proxy for that.
In light of what we've seen from the lawyers who have opted to capitulate to this administration, does this in a way kind of restore your faith in the rank and file of those who are in the legal profession, to see them so forcefully rebuke someone who is even tangentially related to the Trump administration?
Yeah. So look, I think that the pendulum is definitely swung. This election is not taking place in a vacuum. We have seen over the last few weeks. First, we saw the defection of four very senior partners at Paul Weiss who left to start their own law firm. Then, more recently, just late last week, we saw another very senior lawyer, the former U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York, left Paul Weiss to actually join Jenner and Block, which is one of the law firms that didn't capitulate, but that fought. We are seeing clients leaving the law firms that capitulated. And those law firms that capitulated have become very, very quiet. For a while they were strutting around talking about how smart they were as business deal makers, and they've grown quiet. Against that backdrop, you have this election, which, like I said, Brad Bondi can position it however he wants. He said that he is disgusted by how rabid partisans lurched this election into the political gutter, turning a professional campaign into baseless attacks, identity politics, and partisan recrimination. That's the view of the guy who got 9% in a two-way election.
Right.
But there is a kernel to what he's saying, which is that that people are just recoiling from the notion that we are going to put in position of power and in our position of trust people who are sympathetic to, forget about they are, but they're sympathetic to what the Trump administration is doing. And, I assume, and by all indications, Brad Bondi is not estranged from his sister and, shares presumably some common worldview. I don't know to what extent, but certainly he did not run a campaign against his sister. And so, yeah, I do think it is restorative of the legal profession to some extent.
So now that we have seen instances where those who've capitulated to Trump are kind of finding themselves on the wrong end of things, especially as it relates to these attorneys, not just the fact that they've become pariahs within their own community, but because they're actually those who opted not to capitulate are winning in court. So they're on firm moral ground and they're on firm legal ground. And yet at the same time, we're still seeing some folks, even in the aftermath of all of this, continue to barrel ahead with their plans to continue to capitulate to Trump. As it relates to CBS, you have Sherry Redstone is continuing to do the same thing to try and preserve this deal that's going on. And so do you think that we'll see the same kind of pendulum swinging back, the same backlash that we're seeing in the legal profession, which is kind of leading this field in the other professions, be it media outlets, these tech billionaires, these universities, whatever it may be?
Look, I've kind of lost all hope for the legacy media. I mean, you mentioned Sherry Redstone, who, is presumably still trying to figure out how to settle a frivolous lawsuit for CBS. But we just saw ABC News, decide that it is going to part ways with Terry Moran, who is a longtime correspondent there, for doing nothing other than telling the truth.
Right.
Now this is a network, ABC News owned by Disney, that already found a way to shovel $15 million into Donald Trump's ledger over a different frivolous lawsuit that they
a lawsuit, by the way, if I can interject, about the purported deceptive editing when just today we had an instance where Fox News edited out Donald Trump saying that he spoke with Gavin Newsom a day ago, because when they wanted to introduce proof to kind of like counteract that, they showed a call log from June 7th. And so Donald Trump says that he spoke with Gavin Newsom on June 9th, shows a call log from June 7th. And that was obviously like a big point in the media where everyone's saying, like, why are you showing a call log from June 7th to prove that you had a conversation with Newsom on June 9th? And so they just edited it out in their evening programming today. And so, like, that's obviously not going to be litigated in the courts, but Sherry Redstone and the folks at CBS are going to settle to the tune of $15 million for some frivolous lawsuit when it happens to them.
Right. And in the meantime, Terry Moran is now out of a job. Jake Tapper is selling his book, which again, I said this before, I don't begrudge authors trying to sell their book, but he seems to have found any number of ways recently to essentially side with the right-wing media in ways that, again, I think I don't think he should be fired. I think people should evaluate what he says on its own terms. But the idea that Terry Moran gets fired just tells you where the legacy media's head is.
Right.
It's like they neither understand the challenge that is in front of us. They don't understand the stakes facing democracy. But even worse than that, they don't understand their audience. I don't know who the bigwigs at Disney think is watching their news, but I promise you, it is not the MAGA crowd. I don't know who Sherry Redstone thinks watches 60 Minutes, but it is definitely not the Tucker Carlson audience.
Right.
And this is something Jeff Bezos learned when there were all those people who dropped their subscriptions from the Washington Post. Who does he think reads the Washington Post? Who does he think pays for the Washington Post? It is not people who want him to side with Donald Trump. And so, in some ways, the fact that they are doing this is despicable for democracy. It also, like I said, calls into question their business acumen. But it's part of the reason why, you and I do these videos, and I'm so supportive of your channel because, you're willing to tell it like it is. And that's what I try to do with Democracy Docket. It's what I try to do on TV. And there are some legacy media outlets that do that, but far, far fewer than there used to be.
Which underscores the importance of having your voice in this ecosystem. So for everybody who's watching right now, one small step that we can all take to support Mark and his team and the invaluable work they do, especially in the courts, which is ground zero during the Trump administration right now. We can all sign up to subscribe to his YouTube channel. It's completely free, but it'll help elevate his voice, the voice of his team, which is so urgently needed right now, especially in an environment where legacy media continues to drop the ball and fail to meet the moment with the urgency that it deserves. So I'm going to put that link to his YouTube channel right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video. Please make sure to hit the subscribe and support the work that he and his team are doing. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
I'm Mark Elias.
This is Democracy Watch.